Yevamos Daf begins with the Brisa and contains one Mishnah and takes us to the end of the sixth parak of the Masechta. The Daf is primarily discussing the mitzvah of Pru Revu. The first half will discuss situations in which a man and a woman are married for some time without children. What happens when they move on from each other? If one has a child or the other has a child, can they have a claim against each other? And what happens when they're arguing over whose fault it is, and whom do we rule in accordance with? Second part of the daf, beginning with the Mishnah, will discuss the halacha of Pru Revu as it pertains to a woman altogether. Is a woman obligated in the mitzvah of Pru Revu? The Mishnah will have a machlokas on the topic. The Gemara will try to find the sources of this machlokas and try to come to a conclusion as to what the halacha is. So let's begin the Brisa. Brisa says that a woman who is married to two men, she's married once to one and then to another one, she doesn't have children from either of them. Strong possibility that she is the reason that children can't be had. She should not marry a third husband who has no children yet and is still obligated in the midst of Pru Revu. She can marry somebody who has children already. That would be wise. That way there's no problem of Pru Revu. If she does go ahead and marries a third husband and she does not have children from him, now she's already had three husbands without children from any of them. There's a clear chazaka that she has a problem, and therefore he can send her away without giving her a ksuba. Now, much of this daf will be discussing ksuba. Ksuba is a right that a woman has to protect her rights in the marriage, make sure that she cannot be mistreated by her husband. If, however, she is the problem with the marriage, or something wrong with her, or she pulls out of the marriage, or she somehow demands an exit to the marriage, then she loses her right to the ksuba. In this case, clearly 3 times she did not have a child from 3 different husbands. The reason lies with her, and she therefore doesn't get a ksuba. Now, the Gemara now discusses what happens if there's later incidents that have revelation on previous incidents. So the Gemara first speaks about a case where she was married twice. The first 2 husbands gave her a ksuba because there was no chazaka that the problem was with her. And then she married a third man and did not have children from them. Can the first 2 come and say, aha, now you have 3 times without a children, we want our ksuba back because it was really your fault all along, as you see that you now had 3 times. So the Gemara says, no, they can't, because she can say, no, I was really fine, I was healthy, and it was your fault the first 2 times. The third time, something happened that made me weakened. I was weakened and that's why I couldn't have children with the third man. But there's no proof that it was my fault all along. Now the Gemara says, what happens if she has no children from 3 different husbands? The third one does not give her ksuba, but then she goes and she marries a 4th man and she has a child from him. So now she should be able to go back to the third husband and say, you see, it wasn't my fault. You see, I could have a child from the 4th husband. So you, the third one who sent me away without a ksuba, you owe me my ksuba now. It was not my problem all along. So the Gemara has 2 approaches to this. The Gemara first of all says she's better off not making any claims, because if she'll make the claim and she'll say that, you see, I was able to have children, that husband can cancel her get altogether, cancel her divorce. She'll end up being married be'isser and having a child who's a mamzer. Because the husband will say, I only divorced you because I thought it was clear that you couldn't have children anymore. It was already a 3rd time. You could not have children with your 3rd husband, who was me. If you'll tell me now, you'll prove to me that you can have children, the get was given an error. It was based on a misconception, and it's canceled. Since she obviously doesn't want that, she's better off being quiet. And therefore, she should just walk away without her ksuba. Now, the Gemara says that Rav Papa says that that's obviously not true. He obviously won't be able to taina that, because if that was a good claim, then we would claim it. We would say, hold on a second. Without the husband claiming that the get was an error, the get was an error. The husband only gave it because he assumed that she couldn't have kids, and now she goes, then she has kids. So we would say that the kid's a mamzer. We would say that her next child is a mamzer, and she's married be'isser. But we're not going to say that. And the reason is because the guy obviously understood that it's a suffix, understood that it's not clear, and he gave her the get with the understanding that it is a possibility that she can have kids, and she just hasn't had one yet. Just based on what he's seen so far is enough information for him to give a get. So that's not called a get in error. And therefore, he wouldn't be able to make that claim. However, Papa says we still say that she cannot claim her ksuba from him, because we say that maybe she was weak, there's something wrong with her the first 3 times, as a chazaka is established, and now something healed within her. She became stronger, and she was able to have children going forward. Okay, now the Gemara discusses a number of arguments between them. The Gemara says, what if you have a man and woman that are married to each other, they have not had children, and he says, I know for sure that it's something wrong with her, and she says, I know for sure there's something wrong with him. Generally, up to now we've been discussing where neither of them know. We don't have any information. Here, they each say they know. So the Gemara says we believe her, and that is because the knowledge as to whose problem is something that they can discover in their intimate relationships. Chazal say that a man cannot bear children unless his zriya is yorah kechetz, it shoots like an arrow. And the Gemara says she would know if it shot like an arrow, if it came out with force. He would not be aware of that. And therefore, if she says it didn't come out with force, we would trust her and we would blame him. And therefore, the halachas that follow would be based off the assumption that it's his fault and not her fault. Now, what if he says, you know what, I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to go marry somebody else, and I'm going to go see if I have children from someone else, so then I will prove that it wasn't me that was the problem here. So the Gemara says he wants to do that, he still has to give her a ksuba, because there's a rule that anybody who marries a second wife owes the ksuba to his first wife. He's diminishing her privileges as his only wife. He owes the ksuba to the first wife. Now the Gemara says Rava disagrees with that. Rava says that a man has a right to marry as many wives as he would like. This is, of course, all before Chaim Rabbeinu Gershom, which did not allow this. So as long as he has the ability financially to support them all, then he has a right to marry as many as he wants. If he cannot financially afford it, then he may not do that. Now, we'd seen earlier that if she had a miscarriage, you only count the 10 years towards the time when we say that he must take another wife or divorce her. You only count them from the miscarriage. So what happens if they have an argument, did she miscarry or not? In this case, the one that Gemara brings up, he says she did have a miscarriage, it's not time yet, I don't have to divorce her, and she says no, I did have a miscarriage, you have to let me go. So the Gemara over there says here also she is believed, because if she didn't have a miscarriage, she wouldn't claim she did. She would not want to establish that 10 years have gone by. She would not want to give herself the chazaka of being an akara, of being a barren woman and not able to marry anybody if she really knew that she had a miscarriage. Now, the Gemara says if she has 3 miscarriages, then she has something called hochzak linefolim. She's assumed to not be able to carry to full term. And therefore, anybody who wants to marry her has to take that into consideration. It shouldn't be somebody who doesn't have children yet, obviously. And what happens if, again, they argue about that? He says she only had 2 miscarriages, and she says she had 3 miscarriages. So here also, the Gemara says this was an actual incident that happened. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar says it happened in the Beis Medrash. This question came up. And we said that she is trusted because she would not give herself a chazaka of not being able to carry to term unless she knew that for a fact. All right, now we get to our next Mishnah, which introduces the topic of pru urvu as far as it relates to a woman. The Gemara says a man is for sure obligated in pru urvu. Is a woman obligated in pru urvu or not? So this is a machlokes. The Tanna Kama says no. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says yes. Now, the Mishnah brings a pasuk to support it. Vayivarach osem Elokim, Hashem blessed Adam and Chava, Vayomer lehem Elokim pru urvu. Hashem said to them, be fruitful and multiply in the plural form. That implies he's talking to both of them, and it supports Yochanan ben Broka's position that the woman is obligated in pru urvu. So now the Gemara begins, and the Gemara says, what is this? What's the Tanna Kama's position that a woman is not obligated in pru urvu? So the Gemara quotes Rav Ilan, the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, who says the Torah says, "Milu es arts v'chivshua." As part of the pasuk of pru urvu, it says, "V'yomer lahem Elokim pru urvu u'milu es arts v'chivshua." Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and conquer it. Conquering is a term used for men. Men are the type who conquer. Women don't usually go to war, and therefore he must have been speaking only to Adam, and the mitzvah is only to Adam, only on the man, and not on the woman. So the Gemara says that actually proves the other way, because the term kiv shuha is plural. It's saying you, plural, conquer it. So obviously he's talking to both of them. It should be v'kavsha if he was talking only to one of them. So the Gemara says the vav is actually not there. It's pronounced chiv shuha, but the spelling is kavsha, and therefore the spelling would indicate that he was talking only to one of them. Now, the Gemara quotes of Yosef, who gives another source for this. It is much later in Chumash Bereshis. Vayomer lo Elokim ani kel shakei prei urvei goy kal goyim yemi mekom lachem echal atzecha yitzeyu. Hashem's command of prei urvei is given individually to the avos, and he says to be fruitful, singular, and multiply. Singular is not talking plural, only talking to the man. Now, Rabbi Allah, in the name of Shimon ben Elazar, said other things as well. He was the one who said the first source. The Gemara brings a couple of other statements from him, now that we've mentioned him. The first thing he says is, just like one is a mitzvah to say something, to rebuke someone in a way that will be heard if the person's going to listen, it's also a mitzvah to not say something which won't be accepted. Rabbi Abba says it's an obligation to not say something which won't be accepted, like the pasuk says, like it says, don't rebuke a scoffer because he's just going to hate you. Rebuke someone who is wise because he will love you. Now, Rabbi Allah said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, another thing, it's permitted for a person to change the truth, to lie, to represent falsely in order to preserve peace. Like it says, Avicha Tziva Lifnei Moisei Lemar. After Yaakov Avinu passed away, the Shvatim, the brothers, came to Yosef and said, your father commanded us to tell you that you should bear our sin and don't punish us for what we did. That was something that they said with Shalom. Yaakov never said that. That was a lie. But you're allowed to lie in order to preserve the peace between them. Now, the Gemara takes this a level further. The Gemara says, Rabbi Nassan says that it is a mitzvah, actually, because you find by Shmuel, Hashem actually told him to lie. Shmuel said, Ech elech v'shama hashal v'hargeni. Shmuel said, how can I go? Shaul will hear that I went to speak and anoint David HaMelech, and he will kill me, as being a mord of Malchus. And Hashem said, Vayomer Hashem, Eglas Vokar tikach b'yidecha v'amartu l'zbayach l'Hashem abasi. Take a calf with you, and you'll say that you are coming only to sacrifice. That's of course not true, but Hashem told him to do it. So you see that it's a mitzvah to change and to speak falsely in order to preserve the peace. The Gemara says you can actually take this a step further. Rabbi Shmuel taught that peace is so great that even Kadosh Baruch Hu himself changed the truth because of peace. When Sarah said Va'adoni Zokein, when she said my master is old, referring to Avram, when Hashem reported that to Avram, he said Va'ani Zakanti, that she said that she is old. She didn't say anything about Avram being old, so he changed that in order to preserve the peace between them. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, who is the halacha like? Is it like Rav Yochanan ben Broka, that there is a mitzvah on a woman to have children, or is it like the Tanakh that there is no mitzvah? So the Gemara quotes Rav Yochanan and Rav Yeshua ben Levi. One said the halacha is like Rav Yochanan ben Broka, one said the halacha is like the Tanakh. The Gemara doesn't know which one said which. The Gemara says probably Rav Yochanan is the one who said that the halacha is like the Tanakh, that there is no mitzvah of Pru. Wait, do you see that? Because Rabbi Avo came and he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, the woman is commanded in Pru, and Rav Ami and Rav Asi turned their face away to show their disapproval. Rabbi Yochanan never said that. Now, the reason that they didn't actually say that he didn't say that is because of respect for Rabbi Avo. So Gemara points out, and we've seen this in other places, that Rav Papa said that there's different versions as to who the person was, if it was Rabbi Avo or Rabbi Chia bar Abba. If it was Rabbi Avo, we understand why they didn't say anything, because of kavod of the king. Rabbi Avo was close to the Caesar. However, if it was Rabbi Chia bar Abba, it would be strange that they didn't say anything. If they held that he was saying the wrong halacha, they should have said so explicitly. Anyway, the Gemara wants to know, what do we conclude? What is the halacha? So the Gemara says, Rav Acha bar Chanina said in the name of Rabbi Avo, in the name of Rabbi Asi, it was an incident that happened in front of Rabbi Yochanan in Knishta de Kesari, and he said, Yotzi v'ting suba, he said that she should be sent out and she should be given her ksuba. That was a couple that didn't have children for a while. She got the ksuba. So Gemara says, why should she get the ksuba? If she herself has no obligation, pru revu, so she has no reason to get the ksuba, because she's not losing anything. She doesn't have a mitzvah that she's violating. She doesn't have a right that she needs to stick up for. So why should she get the ksuba? So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. It could be that she wanted to stay in the marriage. She wanted to have children, even though she didn't have a mitzvah. She suffered from the fact that she didn't have children without the mitzvah, and that's why she lost her rights, and that's why she has a right to demand the ksuba. Now, why would she want children if she doesn't have a mitzvah? So the Gemara says, like an incident where a woman came in front of Rav Ami, and she said, I deserve my ksuba. And he said, why should you get your ksuba? You didn't lose anything out from the fact you don't have kids. You don't have a mitzvah. And she said, who's going to take care of me when I'm old? I need a child to look after me, and therefore she has a right to demand it. And he said, fine, she deserves her ksuba in exchange for that. Similar story happened with Rav Nachman. A woman came and demanded her ksuba, and he said, you don't have a mitzvah. And she said, I need a walking stick for my hand, and I need a shovel for my grave. I need somebody to take care of me in my old age and after I die. And again, he said she has a right to force a ksuba. Now the Gemara quotes an incident. The Gemara says Yehuda and Chizkiah were twins, and one was finished being formed at the end of his 9th month of his when he was inside, and the other one was finished being formed at the beginning of the 7th month. Their mother was apparently Yehudis, who was the wife of Rabbi Chia. She had a lot of pain during the birth, possibly because of the different size formations, and she wanted to prevent herself from having children further. She didn't think her husband would agree, so instead she dressed up like a stranger, and she came and she asked Rabbi Chia, her husband, and she said, is a woman obligated in Puravu or not? And he said no. So she went and drank a concoction which makes women unable to have children ever after. Later Rabbi Chia found about it, and he was upset, and he said, I wish you would not have taken this permanent contraceptive until you had borne me at least one more stomachful of children, that is, one more pair of twins. Yehuda and Chizkiah were one pair of twins that she had. She also had a pair of twin girls named Pazi and Tavi. So he was upset about that. Now the Gemara says this seems to imply that the halacha is that she is not obligated in the mitzvah of revu. The Gemara asks Rav Acha bar Katina and Rav Yitzchak said that there was an incident that happened with a woman that was half shifcha and half paschorin. She was half in Evan and half free, and they forced her master to free her other half so that she'd be able to marry somebody. In her status of half shifcha and half paschorin, there's nobody that she can marry. And so they made him free her. Now, if she didn't have a mitzvah, so why would they force her? Why would they force the master to free her? The master was a different reason, because she wasn't married to anyone, and she knew she couldn't marry anyone. She was doing averos. She was performing in a hefker manner. In order to prevent that, they wanted her to get married. She was being machshel people, and therefore they made the master free her so that she could actually marry somebody.